Proud Family is a show I grew up loving, and even now as an adult, I still enjoy it just as much. In a lot of ways, it's been relatable to my own experience as a black girl. But at the same time, I can't ignore that there's been moments where this show leads into negative stereotypes about certain people and groups. I've talked about that a few times on my channel. But one thing I'll always give the Proud Family credit for is that they never shy away from tackling real important issues. They're willing to start conversations that matter. But the flip side is that sometimes they don't always stick the landing. A topic that comes up on the show time and time again, whether it's brought up by fans or addressed directly by the writers, is colorism and racism. In a previous video, I broke down an episode from season 2 of Louder and Prouder where the writers tried to tackle racism. The intention was there, but the execution fell flat. The episode never caught the issue by name, never clearly explained why it was harmful, never held the character responsible, accountable on screen, and instead shifted the blame onto the wrong person. Because of that, a lot of viewers, including myself, walked away feeling disappointed of how poorly such an important topic was handled. That's why when I watched season 3, episode 3, The Shade of It All, I was honestly impressed. I felt like the writers actually learned from their past mistakes and tried to put in the effort to make the story right this time. This episode didn't just touch on colorism. It addressed it head on in a way that was impactful, necessary, and memorable. It left a lasting impact on the audience, and that's exactly why I wanted to make this video today. This episode starts with Penny and Dijonay walking into Penny's house. Trudy sees the girls walk in and introduces them to her sorority sister Rosalie. Right away, Rosalie asks Penny to do a little twirl, and after looking her up and down, she turns to Trudy and says she'll be perfect. That's when we find out that Trudy and Rosalie's sorority is hosting an invite-only beauty pageant, where the winner will receive a 4-year scholarship. Rosalie makes it very clear that she has her eyes set on Penny as the ideal candidate. And just from Penny's appearance, Rosalie is already convinced that she's going to win the crown. But the thing is, Penny doesn't actually care about the pageant. She's not excited about the crown or the scholarship offer, and she honestly looks uncomfortable. But what really stood out to me in this moment was Dijonay's reaction. She actually felt opposite of Penny and was excited to hear that there will be a pageant. Dijonay ends up asking if she can be a part of the pageant too, but before Trudy can respond, Rosalie cuts in with a dismissive reminder that the pageant is invite only. That alone already shows that Rosalie didn't see Dijonay as someone who should be considered for the pageant. But what makes this moment so powerful is that Trudy steps in. She interrupts Rosalie and insists that Dijonay absolutely deserves a chance to interview for the pageant, reminding her that the sorority's entire motto is to uplift all girls. Therefore, if they don't allow Dijonay to interview, they will be dishonoring the very values that they claim to stand for. Faced with logic, Rosalie had no choice but to agree. But the camera makes it really clear how she really feels, and her facial expression shows that she's not happy about this. She clearly doesn't want Dijonay there, and it's obvious that she only said yes to save face in front of Trudy. That detail is what makes the setup for this episode so strong. You can already see how the writers are planting the seeds of the larger issue of colorism in this episode. Rosalie has no problem seeing Penny as perfect for the pageant, but when it comes to Dijonay, her first instinct is to shut her out. From there, the episode transitions to Dijonay and Penny at school, sitting together at lunch. They're approached by Principal Hightower, who casually brings up that she heard that Penny will be competing in the pageant. Right away, I think it's important to mention that Principal Hightower is a member of the sorority hosting the pageant. So we can infer that her sorority sister Rosalie was the one that told her that Penny will be competing in the pageant. Which makes sense why she didn't know that Dijonay will be in the pageant also, because Rosalie didn't tell her. Dijonay, still full of excitement, eagerly jumps into the conversation and tells Principal Hightower that she's also going to be a part of the pageant. But instead of offering genuine encouragement, Principal Hightower responds with a backhanded comment. She calls Dijonay Honey Boo Boo, which is a reference to the girl from TLC's Toddlers and Tiaras, who became a pop culture punchline in the mid-2000s. But this comparison isn't just random. It's meant to diminish Dijonay, to reduce her from a serious pageant contender to a joke. And Principal Hightower doesn't stop there. She begins to question Dijonay about who invited her, clearly skeptical that she could even belong in such a competition. And when Dijonay explains that both Trudy and Rosalie extended the invitation, Principal Hightower laughs in disbelief. It's clear that Principal Hightower, just as much as Rosalie, sees Dijonay as someone undeserving, out of place, and not good enough to stand beside the quote-unquote ideal candidates. Before walking away, she throws Dijonay a very insincere congratulations. But the damage has already been done. The scene makes it clear that people in positions of power within the sorority already have a bias against Dijonay before she even gets a chance to prove herself. Back at the table, Penny tells her friends that she has no interest in being in the pageant. But Dijonay, on the other hand, is still glowing with excitement, holding on to the possibility of winning something that could really change her life. This contrast between Penny's indifference and Dijonay's determination sets up a really important message. To Penny, the pageant is optional, but for Dijonay, it represents opportunity, recognition, and validation, which for her can really change her life. The episode then cuts to Penny's house again, where Dijonay is practicing balancing books on her head. Trudy, who's in the living room, pulls out old pictures of her from her pageant days. And here's where a very subtle but powerful detail shows up in the background of Trudy's picture. She's standing next to a picture of a brown paper bag. And at first, to some viewers, it might not stand out. But for those who are familiar with its history, immediately recognize what it means. Trudy took the brown paper bag test, which was a colorist practice used in Black communities, fraternities, sororities, social groups, events, and even some churches to determine who was quote-unquote acceptable. If your skin was lighter than the brown paper bag, you were allowed in. But if you were darker, you were excluded. So when the show quietly places the brown paper bag in Trudy's photo, it isn't just a background prop. It's foreshadowing that tells us about this pageant and what the sorority behind it has really been built on. Trudy then shows Penny the dress that she wore for her pageant years ago, hoping that Penny will follow in her footsteps. But Penny stands her ground and tells her mom again that she doesn't want to participate in the pageant, and to make it clear, she even walks off. Dijonay follows her, still trying to convince Penny to join, but Penny refuses and promises to support Dijonay in her journey in the pageant instead. The next big scene takes place at the sorority house where the pageant interviews are held. Trudy helps prepare Dijonay by giving her a full makeover, and even gives her some earrings that she wore to her own interview back in the day. Trudy also tells her that the most important thing is to just be yourself, which clearly means a lot to Dijonay. When Dijonay finally walks into the interview room, she looks a little nervous but still excited. However, Rosalie's face tells a completely different story. From the moment Dijonay walks in, Rosalie is already judging her, ready to count her out. But Dijonay doesn't let this discourage her, at least not right away. She actually starts off really strong, answering questions with confidence. But when she's asked to tell the interviewers about herself, she suddenly freezes. She stumbles and admits that she doesn't know what to say, and for a moment, it looks like she might blow her chance. But when Rosalie begins to tell Dijonay that her interview is over, she takes a deep breath, regains her composure, and finally answers the question. She proudly shares who she is, and in doing so, she completely wins the room over. The interviewers give her a standing ovation, and two of them openly say that her interview was the best that they've ever seen. For once, Dijonay is being celebrated for her talents and personality, and it feels like a win. But that's what makes what happens next hurt even more. The following day at school, Dijonay rushes to check the results with her friends at lunch. Everyone assumes that she's going to make it because she aced the interview. But when the list is revealed, Dijonay's name isn't there. She didn't make it. And this left everybody shocked, including the audience. How could someone who did so well be rejected? That's when Maya points out what nobody wants to say out loud. Every single girl in the pageant is light-skinned. And suddenly, the pieces and details that we saw from earlier in the episode fall into place. The brown paper bag in Trudy's pageant picture was foreshadowing the exact bias that Dijonay is now experiencing firsthand. She was the only dark-skinned girl in the lineup, and she was the only girl that got denied. This is the moment that the show finally calls it what it is. Dijonay didn't just get rejected. She was excluded because of colorism. And the fact that the Proud family directly calls it out by name is so important. It isn't sugarcoating the issue. Instead, the show is educating the audience on colorism in a very real and specific way. As mentioned earlier, the brown paper bag test was a discriminatory practice used within Black communities. The idea was that if your skin was darker than a brown paper bag, you were excluded. The test was a way of enforcing proximity to whiteness as the standard of beauty, success, and belonging. Even though the literal practice has faded with time, the underlying mindset that lighter skin is more desirable or more worthy has never gone away. It's embedded in how people are treated, judged, and valued today. From here, the episode shifts back to Penny's house. The family was sitting in the living room, and one moment that really stood out to me here was Sugar Mama speaking about Rosalie. She mentioned that she never liked Rosalie because she always had her nose in the air, acting as if she's better than everyone else. On the surface, it could sound like the typical Sugar Mama shade, but when you really think about it, it hits deeper. Sugar Mama herself is a dark-skinned woman, and knowing that Rosalie lives by colorist standards, it's not hard to imagine that Rosalie possibly has treated Sugar Mama differently or outright rejected her at some point based on her skin color. It makes perfect sense that Sugar Mama would have picked up on Rosalie's superiority complex because she's likely experienced it firsthand. Not long after, Penny, Dijonay, and the rest of the friend group come home and are visibly upset. Dijonay barely has time to process what happened when Trudy excitedly tells her that she's working on her dress for the pageant. That's when Dijonay breaks the news that she didn't get accepted, and Trudy is genuinely shocked. She knows that Dijonay did well in her interview, so it doesn't make sense to her. That's when Penny and Maya step in and plainly say that Dijonay didn't get in because she's dark-skinned, and the sorority only wanted light-skinned girls. But instead of accepting that reality, Trudy immediately pushes back and tells them that they must be mistaken because her sorority would never do something like that. To back up her point, she even insists that she herself is brown-skinned, which she clearly is not. This prompts Oscar to jump in and point out that Trudy is in fact light-skinned. But still unwilling to believe it, Trudy pulls up a picture of her mom, dad, brother, and sister who are all dark-skinned. She tries to use this as proof that because her family is darker, she must also be brown-skinned. But the irony is that the photo actually proves the opposite, highlighting how much lighter she is compared to the rest of her family. Something Oscar really drives home when he takes a selfie of them side by side and points out the contrast. This was such a smart moment from the writers because it really shows how deep denial about colorism can go. Trudy doesn't see herself as benefiting from light-skin privilege, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. That's when Maya says out loud what's really happening. The sorority gave Dijonay the brown paper bag test. Both Sugar Mama and Trudy are shocked when they hear this, and Sugar Mama quickly explains to the girls what it really means. She refers to it as some mess that bougie Black people who thought they were better than everyone else used to do. The way Sugar Mama talked about the brown paper bag test made me wonder if she herself had been on the receiving end of it. Trudy is the only one in the family who talks about being a part of a sorority, and I believe that if Sugar Mama had been a member too, she would have mentioned it. So it makes me question, maybe Sugar Mama tried to join, but was denied because she didn't pass the brown paper bag test. That would explain why she knew exactly what it was and why she described it with so much emotion. Or maybe she was just educated on the history of it. This generational perspective adds another layer to this episode. For Dijonay, colorism is something that she's just not being forced to face. But for Sugar Mama, it's an old wound that never fully healed. Then Maya says the line that I think is one of the most important in this whole episode. She says, between always having to carry your receipts and never being able to find your foundation color, us dark and lovelies don't stand a chance. That one line manages to touch on both systemic racism and everyday microaggressions. When Maya mentions always having to carry your receipt, she's talking about how dark-skinned people are often unfairly profiled as thieves or liars, and constantly feel pressure to prove their innocence. And the comment about not being able to find your foundation shade is about the beauty industry's long history of ignoring darker complexions, sending the message that black girls, especially dark-skinned black girls, don't fit the beauty standard. As I'm recording this voiceover, I did not expect to get this emotional. And it's kind of crazy because I've watched this episode multiple times, I've sat with it, I've written and I've rewritten the script. And while I knew how heavy and important this topic was, it didn't hit me like this until I read this script out loud. And honestly, it's just reminding me how real this issue is. Colorism is real, and so many of us, including myself and so many other dark-skinned people who speak on this, are constantly being told that it isn't. But the truth is, colorism is engraved in the minds of so many people, and it's become such a normalized way of thinking. And a lot of people don't even recognize the biases that they carry or where they come from. And then there are the people who do know, but they just don't care. I already know that some people watching this video are going to take something away from it. And other people are going to watch this video and complain about me bringing up this topic. And honestly, that's the problem. That's the type of mindset that keeps this cycle going. Those are the type of people that turn a blind eye because it's easier than facing the truth. This conversation matters and this episode matters. And I'm always going to use my platform to talk about issues just like this. So for those of you who are truly listening and trying to understand, I thank you. I just needed to share that thought, but now back to the video. The fact that the Proud family gave Maya this line matters. It's blunt, truthful, and refuses to soften the reality of what dark-skinned people go through. And honestly, it makes this one of the most powerful conversations that the show has ever had. After this, we get what I think is the most heartwarming and emotional part of the entire episode. Trudy looks Dijonay in the eyes with sincerity and apologizes. On the surface, it could be read as a simple apology. Trudy feels bad that her sorority rejected Dijonay from the pageant because of her skin tone. And while that's true, I believe that in this moment, Trudy's apology goes much deeper. What I saw in Trudy's face was the realization finally hitting her. This wasn't just about a pageant. This was about the bigger, painful reality that Dijonay and so many other dark-skinned girls like her have been living with for generations. Trudy wasn't just apologizing for this one act of rejection. She was apologizing for the system, history, and the fact that a girl as bright and deserving as Dijonay would even have to experience something like this in the first place. And most importantly, Trudy was apologizing with the awareness that this isn't something she herself will ever have to go through as a light-skinned woman. She would never have to walk into a room and be dismissed for being too dark. And that, I think, is why her apology is so layered. Because she's not just saying, I'm sorry that this happened. She's saying, I see you, I understand, and I'm sorry that the world failed you. This is exactly why it's so important to be clear about definitions. By definition, colorism is prejudice and discrimination against individuals with darker skin tones, favoring those with lighter skin. Therefore, light-skinned people cannot experience colorism. Yes, they may face other kinds of bias in certain contexts, but colorism specifically exists because the hierarchy privileges them. They are the ones who benefit from it, whether it's conscious or not. And in this scene, Trudy recognizes that. She empathizes with Dijonay not as someone who shares the experience, but as someone who is privileged enough to escape it. And she tells Dijonay something so beautiful. She tells her that her skin color is a gift, and that no one should ever make her feel like she's anything less than the beautiful young woman that she is. And for Dijonay, hearing those words truly means a lot. And you can see it in her face. This isn't something that she's been told before. If you think back to Dijonay's character throughout the original series and even in this reboot, she's always treated as the butt of the joke. She's the quote-unquote undesirable one, the loud one, the clingy one who chases after Sticky, the one who's never seen as graceful, refined, or beautiful. Rarely, if ever, has anyone truly affirmed her worth. And that's why this moment hits so hard, because for the first time, Dijonay is being uplifted. She's being told directly that she's valuable, beautiful, and enough. And Trudy doesn't stop there. She goes straight to Rosalie to confront her, and she doesn't tiptoe around it. She asks Rosalie directly if she used the brown paper bag test on Dijonay. And of course, Rosalie has no shame at all, and she says yes. and she even mentions that Dijonay failed miserably. Rosalie doubles down, saying that not only did she give Dijonay the test, but that she herself took it too, and so did everyone that came before her. In that moment, Trudy's frustration boils over, and she does something symbolic and powerful. She takes the chocolate cake that Rosalie is eating, and she smashes it on her face. And just for a moment, Rosalie is covered in the very shade that she deems as unworthy. The symbolism is undeniable. It's a reminder that these colorist standards are cruel and rooted in nothing but prejudice. The episode then takes a turn towards healing. Penny, Dijonay, and the rest of the friend group decide to put on their own brown paper bag pageant. But instead of exclusion, it's about inclusion. No matter your shade, whether you're lighter or darker, you belong. Their pageant ends up being such a success that nobody shows up for Rosalie's. Everyone chooses to go to Dijonay's pageant where everyone is welcome. Rosalie and the other sorority sisters even go to watch Dijonay's pageant. And they're so moved by what they see that they begin to realize just how wrong their way of thinking has been. By the end of the episode, Rosalie actually apologizes. At first, she directs the apology to Trudy, but Trudy does something really powerful here. She stops her and tells her that she owes Dijonay the apology. And Rosalie listens to Trudy, looks Dijonay in the eyes, and apologizes for the pain that she caused. And Dijonay responds by saying that every black girl, no matter her shade, belongs into any room that she walks into. And she proceeds to forgive Rosalie. This episode immediately made me think of Spike Lee's movie School Daze, and more specifically, the musical number Good Hair, Bad Hair from the movie. In this musical number, there's an obvious divide between two sororities at a HBCU. One sorority is made up of lighter-skinned women with looser curls, and the other of dark-skinned women with tighter curls. Instead of the literal brown paper bag test that we saw in the Proud Family, the battleground in this movie is hair. But the message that beauty and worth are being measured against a standard rooted in proximity to whiteness is the same. And Spike Lee doesn't hold back in this movie. Through the music, visuals, and strong storytelling, he exposed how these hierarchies play out inside the black community itself. Not just from outside forces, but from within. The lighter-skinned women are portrayed as more acceptable and refined, while the darker-skinned women are mocked, belittled, and seen as less than. And the fact that this all plays out on the stage of a supposed celebration of black identity makes it even more painful, because it shows how deep and insidious colorism is. What I find so powerful is that even though School Daze was released back in 1988, the core issue that it tackled is the same one that the Proud Family chose to highlight decades later. It's a different generation, but the same wound is being addressed. Both the Proud Family and School Daze forces us to sit with the discomfort of recognizing how these divisions show up, not just historically, but in the present. And the parallel doesn't end with the surface level comparison of skin tone or hair texture. In both School Daze and the Proud Family, there's this underlying message that these divisions aren't natural. They were deliberately planted into our community as a tool of control. The brown paper bag test, the obsession with having the quote-unquote good hair, and the privilege of being light-skinned all stem from a system designed to uphold whiteness as a standard, and to make us turn on each other rather than stand together. Spike Lee makes this crystal clear at the end of School Daze. After all of the conflict, fights, and the rivalries, we see the character Dap stand in the middle of the campus and cry out, "Wake up." And the camera shows everyone, from the students to the faculty, even the sorority girls who have been at odds with each other throughout the duration of the movie, stepping out of their dorm, still in their pajamas, gathering around him, unified in this moment of realization. Then comes the part that still gives me chills. Spike Lee himself, playing the character Half Pint, breaks the fourth wall. He looks directly into the camera, directly at us, and he repeats the words, "Please wake up." This isn't just a line in the movie. This is Spike Lee talking to the audience, to black people, telling us that if we keep fighting each other over the shades of our skin and textures of our hair, we'll miss the bigger picture. The real enemy isn't each other. The real enemy is the system of racism, inequality, colorism, and white supremacy that benefits from our division. And when I think about the ending of School Daze, I can't help but connect it back to this episode of The Proud Family. Because what Rosalie and the sorority were doing with their pageant was exactly what happened in this movie. They were reinforcing a system that says light is better, dark is lesser, and your worth is determined by how close you can get to the European standards of beauty. The message of this episode wasn't just for Dijonay, Penny, or even Trudy. It was for us, the viewers. Just like Spike Lee called the audience to wake up at the end of the movie, the Proud Family was holding up a mirror and saying that this is still happening. They were asking if we're going to continue to ignore it or if we're going to confront it. And the brilliance of this show is that it didn't just stop at exposing the problem. They actually modeled what healing and unity could look like through the brown paper bag pageant. So when I said that this episode of The Proud Family was a wake-up call, I mean it in the same way that School Daze was. They both force us to acknowledge that colorism is not just history, but it's our current and unfortunate reality. And we can't afford to stay asleep to it. Because if we do, we risk letting these hierarchies rob us of the very community, unity, and self-love that we need to survive. Honestly, the reason that this episode is so important is because it goes far beyond just Dijonay's story. What makes the Proud Family's handling with this topic so powerful is that it shows that colorism isn't just about one person being mean or about one person being excluded. It's not just an individual bias. It's something that's been passed down through families, communities, and institutions for generations. Rosalie herself makes it clear when she admits that the brown paper bag test is something that has always been done. It's a tradition. And that detail is chilling when you think about it because it was passed down over and over again until it was normalized. And that's the generational impact of colorism. It doesn't just show up in the decisions of one person. It trickles down into families, friendships, churches, schools, workplaces, and social spaces. It's in those little jokes that people think are harmless. And it's also in those comments that sound positive on the surface but carry a backhanded edge. Like when someone says you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. It's in the way that people grow up and see who gets treated as beautiful, who gets treated as smart, and who gets treated as worthy. And over time, those messages don't just shape how others see you. They shape how you see yourself. What this episode did so well was show the layers of that impact. With Dijonay, we see the direct pain of a young black girl being denied an opportunity because of her skin tone. And with Trudy, we see how colorism can create blind spots with lighter skinned people who benefit from it. Trudy truly believed that her sorority would never do something like this, because she's never had to face the rejection herself. And then there's Sugar Mama, whose quick and painful recognition of the brown paper bag test suggests that she's lived through it before. That 3-generation perspective makes this episode hit on a much deeper level. It really shows how colorism can damage self-esteem, divide communities, and reinforce a hierarchy that none of us created, but all of us have to navigate. It's a problem that's been subconsciously passed down through generations. And the Proud family doesn't tiptoe around that in this episode. They could have softened the story or just hinted at the issue without really naming it, but they didn't. They called colorism out for what it is. And they even took it a step further by referencing the brown paper bag test directly. They gave Maya the space to speak the truth about the microaggressions that dark-skinned people face every single day. And they let Dijonay's story unfold with dignity and gave her the opportunity to stand strong in the end. That matters. Because too often in media, dark-skinned people are given the roles of the joke, the sidekick, the aggressor, or even the afterthought. They rarely get to be the ones whose pain is taken seriously, whose beauty is affirmed, and whose voice is censored. But in this episode, the Proud family doesn't make Dijonay the punchline. And honestly, that's what makes this episode so beautiful to me. It shows how colorism is passed down and how it divides us, but also how it can be challenged, unlearned, and dismantled. It reminds us that yes, these wounds run deep, but they don't have to define our future. Rosalie only treated the brown paper bag test like a tradition because no one ever stepped in to stop it. But in this episode, we finally see people stand up for what's right. Dijonay, Penny, Maya, and even Trudy chose to speak up. And that's the generational shift that we need. It's not enough to just recognize that colorism exists. We have to call it out, interrupt it, and refuse to pass it down. And that's what makes episodes like this so important, especially in a show that's aimed towards young audiences. Kids watching this episode learn that exclusion isn't just unfair, but it's wrong, harmful, and something worth fighting against. The Proud family has always been about family, community, and culture. And in this episode, they took all of those themes and used them to have one of the most honest and necessary conversations that this show has ever had. They didn't just tell a story, they sparked a conversation. And they gave representation to experiences that often go unseen. And they did that by giving Dijonay, a character who has been overlooked for so long, the space to shine in her truth unapologetically. At the end of the day, when I think about everything that this episode gave us, I can't help but see it as more than just another cartoon storyline. I see it as a mirror reflecting the things that we've inherited as a community. The pain, the biases, the unspoken rules about who's enough and who isn't. And for once, the mirror wasn't pointed at us to make us laugh or to make us ashamed. It was pointed at us so we could really see what we've been carrying for generations. And that's what makes this episode so powerful. Because if colorism has been passed down like a tradition, then breaking it has to become a tradition too. If exclusion was taught, then inclusion has to be taught louder. And if a brown paper bag test was once used as a standard, then love, dignity, and pride within our skin tone has to become the new standard. What Dijonay's journey shows us is that silence only keeps cycles alive. But speaking the truth, naming the harm, holding people accountable, and affirming the worth of every shade of black skin shows how change begins. And maybe that's why this episode resonated so deeply with me. It wasn't just about calling out the problem. It was about showing us that healing is possible when we stop protecting tradition and start protecting each other. So the question that I'm leaving you with today is, what are we going to pass down to our friends, families, and the next generation? Are we handing them the same brown paper bag and biases? Or will we give them something better? Because the truth is, every time we choose to unlearn, every time we choose to affirm, and every time we choose to uplift instead of exclude, we're rewriting the story. And if a show like The Proud Family can plant those seeds in a 20-minute episode, then we can surely water them in real life.